The early 2000s were a time when slasher movies were a dime a dozen, many flying straight past theaters and onto home video. One example is the oh-so 2001 Do You Wanna Know a Secret? By now, tons of movies from this era have been discussed and dissected endlessly, so it can be refreshing to take a deeper look at some of those movies that slipped through the cracks of the VHS and DVD aisles. Thanks for joining me for the first review on this new channel. Let's dive right in. So the movie's about a group of friends who all spend their spring break together vacationing at a Florida mansion, and they start getting killed off by someone who keeps leaving them the same ominous note. I know what you did Wait. No. Sorry, I mean, do you want to know a secret? Yeah, that's what we're working with here. If you forgot your thinking caps this time, I think you'll be just fine. For the movie's main selling points, our final girl Beth is portrayed by Doree Barton. There are a lot of relatively unknown actors in this, but her performance stands out from the rest as being sincere despite some lackluster material to work with. Beth's boyfriend was murdered in the movie's opening scene, which happened a year prior to our current events. Her new boyfriend, Hank, is played by Joey Lawrence, and his presence seems to be the main reason that this movie has any fans at all. Some other appearances that genre fans might recognize him from are Urban Legend's Final Cut from the year before and Rest Stop from 2006. I found him to be fine. You know, at least his character is one of two guys in the movie with a few morals still left in their arsenal. Fun fact, both Barton and Lawrence are listed as part of an infamous canned, canceled, or rumored sequel to another slasher that came out the same year as this one, called The Pool. Like Do You Want to Know a Secret, The Pool is hard to track down, but I've done so. You might see it here in the future. Anyways, the real fun from this movie comes from just how loudly it screams early 2000s and Florida. From these hilariously tacky dorm room sets, to the beach party atmosphere, to their party mansion's luxurious pool hangout. The whole vibe is just rich kids trying to have fun. And while not original in the slightest, you can definitely make an enjoyable movie within that broad premise. Because of those vibes, the mansion they're staying at kind of reminds me of an episode of Cribs.
In the wonderful world of Doggyland.
So far, sounds like a good enough time, so why has Do You Want to Know a Secret mostly been forgotten? Well, if the opening set piece didn't impress you by ripping off The Exorcist 3's only iconic moment, don't get excited for the movie's remaining kill scenes. The only other imagery that comes close to being as memorable is when the killer carves the movie's title into his first real victim. More on that shortly. This visual actually stuck with me pretty vividly as a kid. I was only 8 or 9 at the time, however. It probably wouldn't have been as impressive to a me who had a couple more horror flicks in his repertoire. Other than that, nothing is really worth writing home about, and a good chunk of action happens off-screen to compound the disappointment. I'd say that the movie is not scary, it's creepy. And it's creepy because, well, all the dudes are kind of just pervy assholes. It's kind of baffling that they're all in relationships. Every one of them treats their girlfriend like a prized possession, not a partner. Since social media wasn't really a thing yet, our characters aren't afraid of their actions being exposed to the masses. And this is kind of a time capsule of how young people treated each other in the aughts. I was there. It was often like this. Let Oz sum up the guys' collective feelings on women here.
I wish I could be a bitch.
Don't worry, baby. You are.
Morally questionable characters aside, the movie's biggest sin is in its deception. And I wouldn't consider this next bit a spoiler, but if you don't want to hear anything at all about the killer or what he looks like, maybe it's time to track down a DVD or even a VHS copy of your own. Consider my job done. But for everyone else, this is a screenshot of the only image on the movie's Rotten Tomatoes page. Look at this guy. Those big dumb eyes and jaundiced skin. This is the scrotal face of a very sad man in a very bad mask. He's sad that he didn't even make the cover of his own movie's DVD. And maybe he didn't deserve to. Remember that cover? The one that left an impression on me for decades as a kid? Well, it hints to a much better, but more generic-looking killer. Although it is another thing that makes this movie a ripoff of I Know What You Did Last Summer, at least it doesn't look like a cross between Wrinkles the Clown and that monkey puppet side-eye meme. But the entire scene this version of the killer is in commits one of cinema's biggest crimes. It's revealed to all just be a bad dream. And it's actually the second time we're subjected to an unexpected awakening from Beth. And the first was a double wake-up fake-out right at the start of the movie. This kind of lazy writing is really unforgivable no matter what level of filmmaking you're at. Usually I turn a movie off when it commits a sin that bad, but here I was so shocked they went that route twice that I just accepted it and let it boost the movie's cheese factor a little higher. But in reality, I'm pretty sure that the filmmakers realized that the mask they had looked so bad that they needed to write something into the script that allowed them to put something better looking on the cover to sell the movie. And if that's the case, well, I guess it worked. Because once the killer is revealed to actually just be Captain Nutface over here, well, any shot at keeping some tension around is just gone. And it does get worse. I'm about to spoil the end of this barely watched movie from 23 years ago, so if you want the reveal to be squeaky clean for the night you finally snuggle up with your beloved pet raccoon and spend your precious Saturday night with, say, a doobie, some popcorn, and Do You Want to Know a Secret in full screen SD just like I did, well, it's been swell. Otherwise, come on, it's time to dive just a bit deeper. As I was saying, things get even worse when the killer is revealed to be this insufferable guy. The most obvious red flag box checker there ever was. Seriously, there's like one 20-second scene in the movie where he looks like he's an accepted part of this group at all. And the rest of the time he's just alone or at odds with everyone. The dude is gaming on his laptop and being a grouchy douche while everyone else is enjoying the pool, and it's 2001. Who knew that with all of this movie's faults, it would be able to say that it predicted and made the killer into the least desirable personality type of ensuing generations? That's right, this guy, basically a prototypical incel. At the very least, it makes him look pathetic and weak. Look at this guy with his oversized shirt. He looks like a 6-year-old who just came down cracked out from last night's sugar high on Christmas morning. Not that intimidating. And it doesn't give him a single motive other than obsession. There's this whole marriage angle and a single scene with the killer's parents that's just kind of out of nowhere, but it all feels tacked on and hollow. Altogether, it's just a super lackluster payoff that drags on way too long. And for me, Sacky McSphere Eyes goes down as one of the lamest killers in any slasher I've seen. Some horror movies are remembered for their impact on the genre, but for others, it's harder to find the mark they leave behind. Their signatures are smaller and less distinct. When I think about the general idea of obscure movies, Do You Want to Know a Secret is the movie that pops into my head first. It's kind of a paradox or an impossibility to be the most obscure of anything, but that's what makes these scattered bits of cinema history exciting. You can't find anything online about this movie's production. Not an interview, a promo spot. It's kind of a blank slate. To me, sitting down in my living room for a little feature like this one is nearly as fulfilling as going to the theater on opening night of a movie I've been anticipating for months. Each has the potential to surprise and disappoint, but only one is likely to be talked about years later. I know there are other people out there like me who love to watch, admire, and criticize the oddball corners of cinema. That's why I'm making this the first in a series on this channel, a series I call the Under 500 Club, where I'll be reviewing movies that are marked as watched less than 500 times on Letterboxd. Because every movie has something to offer, even if 99% of it is something you've seen before. And sometimes what appears to be mundane when it's first released can feel like something really, really different 10 or 20 years later. I don't want to limit myself to only talking about movies without a lively fan base, but for Hollywood installments, I'd like to stick to some films that are still underrepresented. Take A Cure for Wellness, for example. Directed by Gore Verbinski, with its 2.5-hour runtime, grandiose gothic setting, and early appearance from today's top scream queen Mia Goth, it sits with a rotten score on Rotten Tomatoes and doesn't even get discussed in the horror community all that often. Or The Pool, as mentioned earlier, which is one of the few German slasher films of the era, despite its dialogue being all in English. It features a young James McAvoy and Isla Fisher, and has one of the most iconic kill scenes I've ever witnessed. To see my thoughts on these films and more like them in the future, subscribe to Movie Dives, and check out my Letterboxd in the description to see ratings of every movie I've seen, and brief written reviews on everything I've watched since 2020. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night.
This is the under 500 club. Only a handful with the ticket stub. A slice of life I'll share with you today. It's not how many times, it's who hears your story. It takes the time to love.